All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Happy Wednesday. I was just saying earlier, we have been on a break for 3 weeks, so it's good to be back. Welcome. You're joining Can Do Webinar Wednesday. It's been really a great session, a great time on Wednesdays, just to sit and take in the good knowledge. We are all about economic development, building capacity, perhaps even dreaming big for our own organizations and our communities. And so Wednesday is the place to be, especially today. I am looking forward to today's presentation with Chelsey. But first and foremost, we just want to take a moment and just acknowledge the gift of this day. We acknowledge, when that sun rises in the east, Creator is meeting us for another day, that we never walk alone. We're surrounded, by all of our relatives, other two-leggeds. We're surrounded by the animals, the plants, the sacred waters, the medicines. It's the season where we're harvesting those amazing sacred medicines. I just got a fresh braid of sweetgrass today. What a gift, what a smell. Our culture, our teachings, our medicines, traditions, it's all beautiful. So we love Wednesdays where we get to listen to people tell and share what they're doing and be inspired. So we thank Creator for the gift of this moment, the gift of this day, that we can grow, we can learn, we can envision. And we can take whatever we have in our hearts and on our plates and walk with it in a good way and Creator's world. So welcome, Tanse. My name's Michelle. I'm joining from Amiskwichi, Waskahigan, Edmonton, Treaty 6 territory. We just encourage you to take a moment to let us know in that chat box where you're joining from. It's always important to acknowledge, the land in which you live on. So I'm originally from Saskatchewan. I'm a Treaty 4 girl, so I acknowledge, living on Treaty 6 territory, has been an honor, and acknowledge the people who've walked before me so that I can walk and that you can walk today in a good way. We could, build those dreams, build our organizations and our nations in the best way. So welcome. We're honored that you have joined us. All right, well, let's get on with it, shall we? Today's conversation is From Understanding to Action, YEG's Flight Path to Economic Reconciliation. So that's awesome. So we have Chelsey Quirk here joining us. She's going to share with us YEG's Edmonton International Airport. And I love me a good flight out of Edmonton. My favorite place probably is LA. So it's been really cool to see what's been going on over there and with that organization. So as YEG strives to be a reflection of its community and an airport for everyone, the importance of true reconciliation and inclusion is paramount. So working together in good faith and with respect, we can find a shared way forward. So today's session will highlight the work that YEG is doing to build relationships with Indigenous communities, to create opportunities, support the Indigenous economy, raise awareness of cultural and tourism impacts, and foster an environment of inclusion. And what can we learn from each other? And where can you start? Really good questions. So a little bit about today's guest speaker, and I'm going to pass this mic quickly on to her. And please, we also encourage you to please bring those questions, bring curiosity to today's presentation. So Chelsey, it's focused on making space and cultivating change. As a proud Métis woman, she has spent much of her career advocating for Indigenous rights and diversity, equity, and inclusion through nonprofit, government, and private sector positions. She joined the team at Edmonton International Airport in 2015 and focuses on creating meaningful and collaborative relationships that drive economic growth and reconciliation for for Edmonton Metro region. So most recently, she led the opening of the first of its kind Indigenous Interpretive and Retail Center at YEG. It's amazing. Shining a spotlight on vibrant Indigenous history, culture, and retail offerings in and around the region. So Chelsey, amazing work that you are doing. And thank you so much for taking a moment to be with us and to lend us your voice, to lend us your knowledge this afternoon. And the virtual mic is yours.
Oh, well, thank you so much for that. It's never gets, less strange hearing someone talk about you. So I appreciate that. I'm so excited to be here. As Michelle said, my name is Chelsey Quirk, and I am here in Treaty 6 territory at Edmonton International Airport today. And as I talk through some of this presentation, it gives kind of meaning behind saying that I'm on Treaty 6 territory, because just saying that we're here and acknowledging the land is not enough. I'm originally from Treaty 3 territory, in the Red River Valley. I grew up in Kenora, Ontario. Michelle talked a little bit about that tourism background. I grew up with my grandparents and my father in Kenora, and my grandmother was a very active Métis senator for the Métis Nation of Ontario there. And so we had this small tourism business, like super rustic, 15 cabins on Lake of the Woods, a restaurant, a marina, and a shoe store, which was odd. My grandmother could never find shoes, so this was a thing that she did on the side. And she taught me, my grandmother taught me the power of entrepreneurship and the power of sharing stories and making space. And so she would take reservations for the rooms or whatever was happening there with a pencil and a book, and would often barter services for fresh walleye or a variety of other things, or come stay and maybe do a little bit of work. And so it was very it was a very Métis way of doing business, actually, thinking back to it. So her dream was always to create something that spoke to her belief and her strength and connection to her culture. And that was sadly before Indigenous tourism was a thing. So, and she's passed away now. And once she did, Indigenous tourism just took off, and we had the struggle in our family thinking about whether or not we would keep this business in Kenora, but none of us were going to go back to Treaty 3 territory to live. So we had to say goodbye. But now I think back and I'm like, we should have kept it, because we could have kept her dream alive. So I think in the work that I get to do, that's part of my passion behind what I do, is keeping my grandmother close to my heart. So I will say, with that little introduction, I'd like to keep this very conversational as we go. If you have questions, you don't have to wait to the end. Feel free to ask questions. I'm going to try really hard to navigate Zoom well. I don't use it very often, so if there are questions in the chat, or you want to ask a question, please do. And so I think the way that I'm going to start is really just giving some background about Edmonton International Airport, to kind of set the stage for the work that we're doing in economic reconciliation, the work that we've done, the work that we hope to do, and maybe some places, and please tell us if there are places that or you see that we're falling short, that we can do better, because that's important for us as well as we go. So Edmonton International Airport, I'm very happy, Michelle, to hear that you've seen some of the work that we're doing here, and I hope others have as well. If you haven't had the chance to fly through Edmonton International Airport in the last while, we look forward to welcoming you. And so some things about us. We've got some things that make us unique here in Edmonton. We've got some things that, that we're still recovering from through the pandemic. So we are the 5th busiest airport in Canada. As the 5th busiest airport, we think about some of those big hubs like Vancouver, Toronto, Montreal. And then of course in Alberta, we have 2 international airports. So we are a self-funded, not-for-profit. So that's all international airports in Canada. It's a model that's different from other places in the world as well. So as a nonprofit, all of the revenue that's generated from the airport has to be put back into the business. So when we think things like infrastructure projects right now, as I look outside, there's runway development happening. All of those essential infrastructure projects are funded back through that revenue stream. which is great. And it allows us some flexibility to do some cool stuff in the airport as well. We are 24/7, 365 operation here. Our winter operations for all of us here in Edmonton, we know the winters get cold and there's a lot of snow. So winter operations, we excel in that department. And whenever I see folks out working on the runway in -45, I just, my heart goes out to them. They work so hard. Something that's very unique to us here is our land mass. So Edmonton International Airport has the largest land mass of any Canadian airport. So we have 7,000 acres of land. So that encompasses the terminal building itself and then all of the surrounding land. So if you think of the Costco, the horse race track and casino, the outlet mall, Radport Raceway, Red Tail Golf Club, all the way around, and then we kind of go and border the city of Leduc as well. So that creates a really interesting value proposition for us here, because we can work with partners and develop that land, whether it be for that commercial development, the hospitality side, or agribusiness, cargo and logistics. And we call this campus here our Airport City Sustainability Campus, because everything we do, we have to keep sustainability, whether it's environmental, social, or governance, in the back of our mind. So that's one thing that I really love about being here. And that we're a living lab as well. So we can use the technology we have on site, or use some of those connections we have for technology companies to come in and maybe test their products or test their ideas in a living lab scenario. So maybe it's a little technology that wasn't always used in the aviation sector. Maybe it was used in the oil and gas sector, but it has aviation components to it. They can come in and test and use the network. Maybe they don't have the backing yet to get their own facility, so they can come in and use a facility here and really test their technology, which I love. And on-time performance and people satisfaction with the terminal is essential as well. So we've got some really dedicated teams of people who work on that. And just as a point of interest, when you think about this large airport city sustainability campus in the terminal, we are our own little municipality here, and we have about 300 employees who work for the airport authority. And then when you think about this whole airport city, it could be upwards of 20,000 when you think of all those kind of ancillary businesses. So it's a big community of people here. And then just as a little background about where we focus our time, and kind of those buckets where we build our strategies around. So retaining and growing passenger and cargo. Air service is number one in everything that we do. So safety and security, and then air service afterwards, because if not, why would we be here? So that will remain our number one. Growing non-aeronautical revenue, so things that aren't connected to people getting in planes. So whether that's people eating, dining and eating, people staying in the hotels on site, people parking their cars, buying little souvenirs as they go. So all of the non-aeronautical side. Creating exceptional passenger experience. We know, especially over the last few years that have been quite difficult, that ensuring that we're thinking with the passenger voice in mind is number one. How do passengers want to travel? What are some of the pain points that they have in the airport? When we think about an airport for everyone, what does that actually mean? Creating those services. Creating positive impact through positive environmental, social, and governance. So again, thinking about our net zero goals, thinking about the environment, thinking about how we can work with our partners to make sure that we're keeping those things top of mind. And then employee success. As being here for 8.5 years, I can absolutely commit to that one right there. The company is very committed to whether it's personal growth, making sure that employees have space to grow, that they're, maybe can try different things in the airport, that there's flexibility, that they're supported throughout the process. So that's super important for us as well. So I'll just start with a little bit about air service, knowing that that's the number one. And we know that the community is quite interested in, they want to get to where they want to get. They want more air service. They want to make sure that they can get on a plane at an affordable price to get to where they're going. Over the last, I'm just going to paint a little picture in the background. Pre-pandemic, we had just about 9 million passengers a year. And then, go forward to the pandemic, and that could be maybe 30,000 passengers a day kind of coming through the airport. And then we saw the pandemic happen, where there could be 300 passengers in a day. At that point in time, we had to say goodbye to about 1/3 of our employee force, workforce. So just over 100 employees, and which was a very difficult time for all of us. That was the last thing we certainly wanted to do. And then walking through the terminal or parking your car in the parkade to come to the office and not seeing a single soul other than maybe one colleague who worked in the airport who was here for an operational requirement. So it was quite challenging. But then we look at 2022 numbers and we see that, we finished with almost 6 million passengers, which showed resilience and strength, and people wanted to be traveling again, whether for work or business. So that was really great to see. And during that time, we also weren't able to accept any international travel. So only 4 of the major airports. So we being the 5th one, we weren't able to accept any international traffic, which was quite challenging as well. And now when we look, and I apologize that this is April numbers and not the June numbers. There was one number that I wanted to confirm, so I stuck with April here, but we can see that they're climbing. We've got more service than we did before the pandemic. So that shows the confidence in airlines, which is fantastic. And then we're forecasting that we're going to be back up to 90% of our passenger traffic by the end of the year. So happy to see that. Again, said over 50 nonstop destinations, which is great. WestJet announced their base here, one of their hubs here, or their bases here in Edmonton. So that's great as well when we think about getting people jobs. I actually had a group of people taking an Indigenous flight training program come in yesterday and do a tour of the airport. And we were sitting in this room looking out the window, and they've been in this program since the beginning of June. And they were watching the planes take off, and they were going through their checklist of what they would do as flight attendants in flight as the plane was getting ready to take off. It was wonderful. And I'm going to circle back to some of these and talk about Indigenous inclusion and how that all fits in there. And then welcoming new airlines as well. We just welcomed Condor, which is service to Frankfurt. So having that international traffic is really important. And then just a little overall flight map to see where we go. Cargo and logistics. During the last few years, cargo and logistics was one of the most important things. I think something that was so important that people didn't realize was so important. When you think about PPE, vaccines, as someone who has a toddler at home, children's Tylenol, making sure that we had access to all of those things. And so the team here worked very hard with different levels of government, private companies to make sure that all of those things were coming into Edmonton. Because when we think about competitive advantage, it's great if it comes into Alberta. It's really great for Albertans and for this region if it comes into Edmonton. And when we think about cargo and logistics, some of the major hubs, of course, Calgary, Vancouver, again, back to that competitive advantage, those places don't have any more room to grow when it comes to landmass, and we have room to grow and to take this cargo and logistics essential work and expand it. And a couple ways that we're doing that is some runway work. So we're doing a National Trades Corridor project, which is creating additional space and capacity for wide body cargo planes. Last year, the government of Canada announced $100 million towards an international cargo hub here in Edmonton. And that'll turn out to be a $300 million project that's going to create all of the space to meet the demand of cargo and logistics. As passenger air service went down during the pandemic, cargo and logistics service went up because there was just such a demand and a need, and it was constant. And then thinking about sustainability and throughout that process, and a lot of work with drones going on as well. We have every day we've got scheduled drone service that comes from the airport and goes across the highway into Leduc, doing different types of testing. I think right now the payload is about 50 pounds that it's taking. So when we think about our connection to our friends in the north, essential work, thinking about medicines and essential items, and that's kind of the goal that we work. Some of those remote communities, making sure that we are working with NAV Canada and Transport Canada to kind of set the stage with regulations for drone delivery, because it hasn't really been done in Canada before, but learning from some other people who are doing it really well too. Again, yes, just the cargo expansion and the apron expansion. lots of work underway. These are my favorite slides, the real estate development, because it just kind of paints a picture of how far we've come. So this is an overview of our campus here at the airport, and it just shows a couple of the different pieces. That blue area is where that international cargo hub will be developed. There's also a space on there which I see isn't highlighted, but working on a solar farm development as well. So the largest solar farm development on an airport. So that is under the final stages of the regulatory is underway right now. So this is a picture of our airport lands in 2008. And then this is us in 2019. We're going to have an updated one coming up right away. So just shows that that expansion, which is really interesting to see. And then, of course, back to our ESG leadership. So first airport to sign the Amazon Climate Pledge. There's going to be, I can't say too much about it right now, but when we think about sustainable fuel, when we think about hydrogen fuel, that's a place where the airport has taken a real leadership role and is looking at the development of that. So tomorrow morning, there will be a big announcement about some of our hydrogen work. So stay tuned for that. Cogeneration facility to reduce our scope 1 and 2. My favorite thing about that project is that it was an employee here who had this idea of, hey, maybe we should do this. This will help us with our ESG goals. And he took that idea, he created a business case, and bam, it's just this wonderful, wonderful project. One of our partners here, Wild and Pine, they've got a vertical garden here on site in one of our old facilities, and they grow tree seedlings to do reforestation and help with carbon offsets as well. So really interesting company. Creating the airport for everyone, diversity, equity, inclusion, being at the forefront of that, understanding what our passengers want and need. And what services they need. One thing that I think about here is for us being an airport for our community and being a nonprofit, our goal, our mission is to give back to the region, to create economic wealth and prosperity for the region. So we have to be part of the community in order to do that and understand that. And then our commitment to reconciliation is a big part of that airport for everyone. And I'm going to talk I'm going to talk much more about that as we get to the end here. So we have a street team that goes out to a variety of events. We hold a charity golf tournament every year. Of course, there was some pause during the pandemic, and we give back. So this will be the 12th. We've given over $1.1 million. Every year we have 3 charities. This year, our tournament's in September. We'll be giving to the Bantaro Traditional Healing Society. So it's the first time they're coming on as one of our partners. So we're really excited. The Bissell Center, and Rise Up in Leduc as well. So we always have a Leduc as our Leduc, our proximity to Leduc. We always like to have a Leduc charity in there, and then we'll rotate new charities every year. And so that's something that's really important to us. So all the proceeds there go back to the community. And passenger experience. We just brought back CATS's verified traveler program, making it easier for folks to go in, working with refugee charter flights coming in. That's those experiences are something else to be here in the airport. Of course, during all the wildfires, having different countries come in with their firefighters and making sure that we're welcoming them and that process is seamless as well for them to come in. Accessibility. On my pass here, I have a little sunflower. So the sunflower program was started in London, Gatwick, and it's a program for people who have invisible disabilities. So an example I use is my mom. She had a couple strokes and a heart attack and lost vision in her one eye completely. Her balance is off. Her confidence isn't there to travel by herself. So she can get, I got her a sunflower lanyard. And so we know as airport employees, and this is in airports around the world. So if someone sees her wearing her sunflower lanyard, they'll go up to her and ask her if she needs help. So it's that invitation. We know that not everyone is comfortable, and sometimes people may be, just apprehensive or whatever. Or someone sees me having this little sunflower, they know that they can come up to me and ask for help. So that's great as well. So just creating programs, accessibility programs is very important. of course, and then as Villeneuve Airport is our secondary airport, and all major airports have a secondary airport. If something were to ever happen, we need to be able to go to a secondary airport for medevac or emergency landings. But Villeneuve is mostly general aviation, flight training, doing some great things out in that area. And of course, they host the air show. They'll be hosting the air show in August. So that also is, they're doing the air show plus a very large employment fair as well. So people looking to get into aviation. Now the stuff that I like to talk about the most. So all of those pieces that I just spoke about, when we think about economic reconciliation, we think about all those pieces. So my role here is to kind of insert myself or wander in and out of all of the different departments. And when we think about projects that we're doing, Indigenous inclusion needs to be thought of throughout each of those processes from the beginning to the end. And I like to say right off the bat, we don't always get it right. And that is part of our learning journey. And when we are working with nations or organizations or communities or individuals, we take that time to learn from them. So some things that I'll touch on here today are some of the work that we've done around relationships, because relationships is always number one, no matter what we're doing. Our Indigenous Interpretive and Retail Center, and some exciting news coming from that and the expansion of that. Some work we did around relationship building and traditional land use, which will be ongoing as well. And we are on our journey, our Canadian Council for Aboriginal Business journey to get our PAR certification. So bringing in people from different parts of the company to lead that process. Education and training for our workforce as well, and education and training for our workforce, but also bringing others in to get excited about the aviation sector. So those are some of the key areas that we're focused on. This I was mentioning earlier that I was hoping I was going to play a video. I'm terrified of video in PowerPoint presentations when I'm virtual, so I opted for no video. But that's I encourage you to follow us on our social media at Fly YEG. We've got lots of videos. Of our Indigenous Interpretive and Retail Center and a variety of other things that we've done. So this is my favorite project. I dreamed about this project from almost the time that I came to the airport, and creating a space that showcased Indigenous culture, that brought in elders and knowledge keepers who would guide the process. In the case of this center, was also led by an Indigenous architect. In my mind, when I pictured the whole thing, I wanted to have as many Indigenous people leading this project as we possibly could. So we worked with elders and knowledge keepers for a number of years, from a variety of territories, and of course our Inuit friends and our Métis friends and our First Nations friends, and we listened, and we knew we had the space, we had an idea of what we wanted, but we also knew we couldn't come in and say this is what we want. We had to listen and take the time to learn and understand. And my president, my new president and my former president said that those meetings were always their favorite, learning from the elders and knowledge keepers. So we wanted a space that people could come and sit. There's some children's activities on the background, star stories and traditional territory. Inside, it's just a very beautiful, calm space. We worked with a Dene artist, Bruno Canadian. If you look at the pillars on this picture, he created a very large original piece of artwork that's in a different place in the terminal, and then we recreated it on these pillars, and the artwork was created through the stories of our elders and knowledge keepers. So it was all about, as you can look at it, about traditional trails and travel and animals and the creator and the spirit life, and he put this all together and created a beautiful piece of art. And then the thing that we struggled with for the longest time was the retail aspect. We knew we wanted to create a concept where we were directly supporting Indigenous artisans, which is completely different than any other kind of commercial venture that we have in the airport, because we didn't want to take anything. We wanted all of the proceeds to go back to the artisan. And that was at the core of what we wanted to do. We also don't run stores. So we kind of struggled with how are we going to do this? And then Indigenous Box, Mallory and her team, our partner on site here, they have their facility on site. And we were talking one day and I was like, wait a minute. I think you guys are the perfect partner. And so I just pitched an idea out there and I thought, we'll see, they're the busiest people already. And they very gladly with open arms came into the project. So all of the drawers in the center, you can open them up. They're all filled with beautiful products. There's a QR code, so people can scan a QR code and it takes you to the catalog. You can pick it up at their site, at their warehouse on site here, or you can have it directly shipped to you or wherever you go. We think of some of our international travelers and people that we knew we wanted to buy with different price points, and we wanted them to buy little things and big things, and it's not always easy to take big things on an airplane with you. So having that shipping, the direct shipping was really important. So it's the most beautiful space. We left it at a place where we could expand it. We know we want to bring audio into it. We want to think of, work with elders and knowledge keepers and communities to think about language. We know that language is something we hear feedback all the time on. And so that, having a different ambience in there. In June, we had, I always say everything I say about it, I'm like, it's my favorite thing about it, but we also want to program the space. So have different people come in, and whether they're dancing, drumming, telling stories, doing beadwork, whatever it is, to come in and bring the space to life and interact with passengers. So in June, we had our first two performances in the center. So we had an Indigenous performer and educator come in, and she, being part of watching passengers interact was, I think, my favorite part. So we would go into the space, she would smudge as she was there. Families would come in and she would teach them about the traditional medicines and smudging. And people were so interested. And just seeing that interaction was fantastic. And then she'd move across to the living wall stage where she would talk and educate and sing. And she phoned me after. She was very apprehensive about coming into the airport. Stressful environments. You don't know how, she just didn't know what she didn't know. And she phoned me after her second performance. And she said, Chelsey, that was the best experience. We planned it around the time of the KLM flight to Amsterdam. So knowing with an international audience, and there's a big group of people who were going to be in the area. So we wanted to give her that stage. And she said that was such a wonderful experience. I had a family from Toronto who invited me to come visit them in their home in Toronto next time I'm there, and they want to learn more. And I had another gentleman who wanted to give me money, and he didn't have any money in his pocket, so he was giving me trinkets that he had. She said she felt so welcome. And to me, that's success. When I think about the space, it's about sharing culture and people learning more and wanting to dive in and learn more. So that's fantastic. And we are just about to kick off phase 2. So this footprint, which is right by gate 62 across from the living wall, is going to expand from gate 58 all the way over into the living wall and into up to the bridge, where we're going to create an entire kind of Indigenous corridor. So we're going to pull back together our elders and knowledge keepers. We're going to add youth to the group as well, because we know we need that youth voice as well. And in my mind, there's nothing better than when you get elders and youth together. And then we're going to talk about the floors and the walls and the gates and the bridges and all of those pieces to create an even bigger footprint and story. So I'm super excited for that. Yeah, it's something that I'm going to carry with me for a very long time. It's weird. I just feel like I'm talking a lot, but I guess that's what I'm here to do. And here's just some photos. Last week was a really, or I guess 2 weeks ago now, was a very special time for the airport as well. So on the bottom, these are our friends from Montana First Nation, and we signed a memorandum of understanding with Montana First Nation that is going to help us grow our relationship and some of the collaborative efforts that we have in a variety of sectors related to agriculture, employment and training, and some other places as well. And that's the first time the airport has ever has ever signed an MOU with the First Nation. And that took years of, relationship building and trust for them to trust us as an organization, because at the very minimum, they have to be able to trust us and know that we're coming from a good place. So the Grand Chief and counselors and their management team have just been a fantastic group to work with, and it was such a great celebration with their whole team. And of course, we'd brought them, the picture beside it was far previous to that, where we brought the team in to do a tour and get to know us a little better and some of the work that we were doing. And then we got to go out and visit. We've been out there a few times now to visit. And that's something that I think it has to be reciprocal. We have to go to community. We'd love to have community come to us, but it has to be both ways. So we're looking forward to building off that relationship and continuing with some of our other relationships as well, and building new ones and strengthening the ones that we have. So that's great. The picture on the top is the group that we had in yesterday, doing the flight attendant training program. Just a fantastic group of folks. And then, of course, at the top, our relationship with Indigenous Box is great. They're our corporate giving partner of choice. We highly encourage all of our partners to use Indigenous Box as well, or partners that work with Indigenous Box, or just the individual artisans. When we think about every single event or opportunity that we have, one of the first questions is whether it's us who's leading it or whether it's one of our partners who's leading it. The first question, I'm probably the annoying person in the room, because I'm like, what does your Indigenous inclusion look like? From having opening in a good way, having elders and knowledge keepers not just join to give a prayer, but have them be part of the program, learn from each other as we go through that process, ensuring that those cultural protocol pieces are top of mind, that people are entering into these relationships in a respectful way. And I always, some of our external partners, it's somewhat newer to them. So I, sometimes will jump in and help them lead through that process. But I always say, I will help guide you through this first process, and then you need to do it yourself next, because that's what learning looks like. And of course, we can always work together, but we all need to learn from each other as we go through these processes. There's just another picture of the inside of the Indigenous Interpretive and Retail Center, which will have an official name that was guided by our elders and knowledge keepers, but just going through some of the things that have to happen in the background before we can share that, which I really hope will come soon. The picture on the top was pre-pandemic. We would partner with some of our fantastic partners to put on a National Indigenous Peoples Day cultural showcase. So we'd always do it a couple of days before. And this picture one year, we would do it outside on the arrivals level. Sometimes operationally, it's challenging because you have to move things really fast. And if the weather's inclement, you just and then I was like, why haven't we ever done this inside? So this is one of my favorite. We did a round dance at the end of our celebration inside, and it was, passengers, passerbys, our team here, everyone was joining in. We had a school come out to join us as well, and that's one of my favorite photos. And then thinking about our work with the Canadian Council for Aboriginal Business, knowing that there was a lot we could learn there. And so we thought, what do we do to keep ourselves accountable? It's fine to say that, hey, we're doing some good work, but where are the measurements? How do we know that we're going to keep ourselves accountable? So creating an Indigenous relations framework, being one of those, making sure that it's not just one department that's kind of doing this work, that we are embedding and weaving Indigenous inclusion into the fabric of our organization, that when people have a project, they say right away, how are we going to ensure that we have inclusion here in this project? How are we going to ensure that there's diverse voices here guiding our process? Which is wonderful. And on the tourism side, we signed a memorandum of understanding with Indigenous Tourism Alberta, as well as the first and last face that people see when they fly in or out of the airport. Being that tourism connector as well is really important to us. And we've got a great team that works on that. And that's part of the weaving it through the organization. When we want to go and pitch a new airline to come bring a flight, to bring a route to Edmonton, Indigenous tourism needs to be part of that story as well. So when we think about those, whether it's putting that business case together, making sure that we're working with our Indigenous tourism partners to tell that story is really important. And we know that travelers and Canadians and people from across the world, especially Europeans, they're hungry to learn more and to immerse themselves into meaningful tourism. And what can be more meaningful than Indigenous tourism in my mind? So thinking about some of those pieces. So now the next little while, we're going to spend some time getting ourselves prepared for that Canadian Council for Aboriginal Business process, making sure that we're properly documenting, creating that framework that's going to guide all of the work we do, thinking about how we are going to keep ourselves accountable. And being able to do some checks and balances at the end so that we don't go off course as well. And I think just learning from, we met last year with a variety of communities around the airport, getting to know each other, hearing some hard truths as well about people's perception and some of the things that we haven't done right, some things that we could do better, some ways that we need to communicate better. And those are hard and important conversations to have, but we can't really move forward without hearing that as well. And at the end of the day, we were just thankful that people were open to sharing that feedback with us, because maybe 6 years ago they wouldn't have been. That was, I think, one of the most interesting few months spent meeting with folks. And we know we have to do that more. There are so many nations and organizations and people that we haven't got to meet yet. So that's definitely on the agenda. And the more places that we go and the more opportunities we have like this to be able to speak to people, I think will help us do that. Because at the end of the day, we have to be here to serve. We have to be here to serve the community. I feel like I should pause and ask if I didn't even look at the time, if there are some questions. You're going to let me off the hook that easy. Wonderful. I'm trying to think if there's any other important things that I should. I will mention one part that I didn't, because I think it's very important. So as an airport, we are on federal land. We have a long-term federal land lease, which creates a unique situation as well. So with all of this development that's going on at the airport, we are regulated to follow the federal impact assessment as well. So we've been spending some time, and I always say with every meeting I go to, I'm not a consultation expert. That's so we are learning that process and making sure that, even if there are areas where we don't need to big C consult, that we're still engaging and that we're creating those relationships and that trust, where before maybe we had all these projects going on and we just did them. Now it's like, hey, we need to be sharing this information with people, because if we want to think about true inclusion and think about some of those big development projects and meaningful Indigenous equity partners in those relationships, then we need to be proactive out there and do that communication and open those channels. So that's something that we've been spending a great deal of time doing and learning. And there's been a lot of learning. I will leave it at that.
All right, Chelsey, there are some questions in the chat box.
Okay.
So I'll just read the first one out just for those who might be catching this on the replay, because I don't think they have access to the chat box. So this one comes from Amanda. So for Indigenous retail partners in the space, what other perks of partnership have been identified as meaningful?
Okay, that's a great question. And the retail part of it is interesting. Sorry, pardon me. Because it is led by Indigenous folks, but I can speak to, so people often will email me, or I'll meet them somewhere and they say, hey, I've got these products. I'm an artisan and this is what I do. I'd love to have my products featured in the space. And I say, okay, that's fantastic. Let me connect you with our partners at Indigenous Fox. And so I make that connection. But on the perks of that relationship, so as we are getting ready to ramp up, to give the official name to the space and ramp up the marketing on it, which we haven't done any formal marketing yet, we will be using. So Edmonton International Airport has a super active and highly engaged social media presence, whether it's on Instagram or Facebook or LinkedIn, and we use different tools for different things. And we've got a great team that works there. So we'll be using our social media accounts to promote all of those artisans. So we'll, create a campaign, whether it's for a specific artist or product or a couple artists, link back to if they have social media handles, making sure that we're linking back to them, as well as thinking about our corporate events. We'll often, if we have specific events, we'll go to some of those artisans and commission pieces as well. And then we also share those with our partners. And then Indigenous Box on their end, they will do the same thing on their channels. We also have a strong partnership with Explore Edmonton. So thinking about tourism overall and Indigenous Tourism Alberta. So making sure that we're connecting all of those partners. And of course, if there was ever an artisan or someone who was part of that program, if they wanted to come in and be in the airport and interact and be part of that, telling the story in the space, then we can do that as well. And of course, those are paid through an honorarium system for people to come in. We would never just expect someone to come in and share their culture and their knowledge for free. So there's lots of opportunities there for different types of perks. And I'm biased, but even just coming in and being part of our airport community is nice too.
I just think as I'm listening to all of this, I think it's just a beautiful example of actually taking those meaningful steps towards that reconciliation piece. This has been beautiful to listen to. There is another question here from Geraldine. When you say diverse cultures, are you talking about the different cultures in Alberta? In your expansion, are you going to be including other Indigenous languages?
I think we're open. And that's part of the, and of course, when we think about, there are so many languages. And that's a really interesting question, because there have been a few occasions where someone has said to us, or even a document, an example, if we were printing our annual report and we're like, okay, well, we have to do everything we do has to be French and English because we're federally regulated. And then we'll say, well, what if we do a version in Cree? I'm like, okay, we can think about that. But what about all the other languages? What about the other peoples who are here? So sometimes it's like, okay, we can take a step as long as we have a plan that it's not just we're going to have the Cree language, and we know that there are many dialects as well. And we think about our friends to the north. When we have our elders and knowledge keepers, it's not just Treaty 6. It's Treaty 6, Treaty 7, Treaty 8, the Inuit community as well, the Métis community. When we think about the Métis community, that's they're a wide variety as well. So I think we're open. We're open to a variety of things. We haven't come to the table and said this is how it has to be. I think that's the exact opposite of what we're trying to do. So as we meet with people and talk to them about language, they're giving us guidance on what's right. Because I also think me as a Métis person, I know my Métis story, but I cannot tell a Cree story. I can't tell, a First Nation story. I can't tell an Inuit story. I can only learn from the people around me to help guide that process. So I think that's really important as well.
Great. I see another question from Ken. He's just saying, Chelsey, you're a great storyteller. Thank you for your journey through the YEG.
Oh, thank you. That's very kind. Thank you.
I agree. Awesome. All right. Well, are there any more questions? I just think that this is beautiful to see how it's unraveled, to hear from the behind the scenes, because I do follow Indigenous Box. So I've, been able to watch the unfolding, I think in the last year. So to be able to hear your perspective, it's just been really inspiring, really powerful, and really hopeful, to be honest, really, really hopeful. So thank you for sharing. So we're gonna call out one last question or comments for today's guest speaker.
I will just add, can't ask myself a question, I guess, but I will just add that, at some point, if I know these are webinars, but at some point, if you ever were planning something in person and you wanted to bring a group of people to the airport, maybe people who don't travel as often and see the space, or maybe even, we could plan something and go visit Indigenous box. I'll put that out there as well. I'm happy to do some planning around that too.
Oh, very kind of you. And I do encourage you, when you go to the airport, check out. It's beautiful to see all of the items, the creations from the artisans. Like, it's beautiful to see. I'm like, this is in the airport for all, all the people to see. It's a really beautiful way to celebrate the gifts that we bring as Indigenous peoples, to the world. So thank you so much for all that you do. Geraldine is saying in the chat box, the space is really beautiful. Love it. Awesome. And we look forward to hearing the unveiling.
Yes.
When is that coming? Do we have like a anticipated date on that, or ETA?
The name hopefully will come. Anyone who's had to name something and go through a trademark process understands there's a little bit,
Okay.
we're going. So hopefully soon. I also hope that we will be talking about kicking off the second phase here quite soon. So I'm hoping in the next maybe 2 months or so. We'll see.
Oh, okay.
Hold me to that, but soon.
Okay.
Soon.
Well, stay tuned. We're excited. Thank you for all that you do. Thank you for breathing life into this and being a partner. And so thank you so much. And also, again, we honor your time and we honor your story and what you bring to the table in the larger conversation around reconciliation. So what an example you are. So thank you so much, Chelsey, for being here. And thank you all for joining us. I hope you feel inspired as I do right now. And I hope that we will cross paths again. And when I'm out at YEG next time, right? Maybe we'll cross paths. All right. So be well, everybody. You have an opportunity. I think that Chelsey's going to make this PowerPoint available if you want it. So feel free to request it. But thank you for joining us. Hopefully we will see you again on our webinars on Wednesday with Can Do. Until then, peace, everyone.
Thank you.